Hi, I'm Sarah Jane,
And I'm Sarah Rappolt.
and this is our podcast, Hair Smarter, and we're here to give you what beauty school didn't.
Today we're getting into hair education rewired. What Harvard knows that stylists need.
And we're going to explore the neuroscience of precision learning and the artistry behind the chair.
Ooh, I can't wait. It truly is what hair school forgot to tell us. Welcome to Hair Smarter. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Sarah Jane. And today we're stepping outside the hair world a little bit, but trust us, it's going to get all connected.
Because you want to know what? It's not just what we learn, but actually how we learn it. And our guest today is the perfect person to break this down for us.
We are joined today by Dr. Gabrielle Rappolt-Schlichtmann, who holds a master's in mind, brain, and education and a doctorate in human development and psychology from Harvard. She's a learning scientist who studies how emotion and stress and design shape the way adults learn. She's also worked with us at It's the Break Room to make sure our classes don't just look good on paper, but the information actually sticks.
So if you've ever left a class thinking, why didn't that stay in my brain? This episode is for you. So without further ado, Dr. Rappolt-Schlichtmann, welcome to Hair Smarter.
Hi,
We're
guys.
beyond excited to have you. Let's start with something simple. What should we call you?
You should definitely call me Gabby because my name's a real mouthful.
Yeah. Okay, good. That was in the prep meeting. We were like, oh, dear God, I hope she says Gabby. And then can you tell us a little bit about what your field of specialization is and what drew you to studying how people learn?
Yeah, so I was really motivated by my own experience of school. I found school really stressful. I'm dyslexic, and so a lot of times the learning environment didn't really match what I needed from education. And so I got really interested in studying stress and how the emotional environment can really shape achievement. And so that's what my research has been about. And my work now is really focused on helping organizations like yours think about how to make classrooms supportive and safe so stress goes down and learning can stick better.
Amazing. This is going to be so good. I can't even wait. So honestly, we see this all the time, right? Anxiety, wanting to impress the teacher's a big one, needing to get it right often blocks actual learning. And one of our main goals in class is to make sure that everyone feels safe to make mistakes. We even start every class with this like funny thing where we ask people like what they're nervous about right now. We answer the question too, but we get some funny looks. But it all gets us on the same page.
Yeah, like an icebreaker.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love that because really what you're doing is an emotion check-in, right? Because the climate has to be right before you begin. It's really important that we have learning experiences where you don't feel judged, where we're priming for that sort of curiosity and comfort around mistakes because you cannot have learning without mistakes. That's where the learning happens. And so you really want to create an environment where mistakes are framed as growth opportunities because that will really help learners improve faster and feel motivated in the space.
So basically, you're saying like emotion and stress can make or break learning. And how do you think this shows up in a lawn classroom kind of setting?
Well, I think to me, it's like when critique is emphasized and the educators are creating an environment where it's all about critique instead of curiosity, sort of leaning into that. Well, how could I do this differently? As opposed to like, that's wrong, do it again. You're going to be activating self protection in the person instead of learning. So you have to, it's really how you frame it when you are giving people that sort of real time feedback.
Yeah, it's
God,
so
I mean, I
true.
just have to say, this is like a therapy session right now that I'm like, yes, it feels right. Because, like, truly, honestly, with vocational training, specifically hair training, hair school training, that's what it is. It's like do it like this. You didn't do it right. Do it again. Do it again. Do it again until you do it like the teacher. And then you spend the first 5 years of your career just doing it like that. Years 6 through 10, you're like, wait a minute. There's other options to get the same result. So it's so interesting that that you say that, because it really shouldn't be about critique, but more togetherness, right? And like learning like that.
Yeah, well, and what we do isn't so black and white either. So there is no like right or wrong way to actually
Mm,
cut hair, right? There's my
mm.
way and there's your way. So it's like I'm just trying to show you our way. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So I think it's really important for people when, there's a difference between when you begin with something versus like moving toward mastery when you can be really flexible and something new comes into the space and you have a skill and you apply it in a new way, right? That's called generalization. So in the beginning, you want something that's really clear and concrete. You want to be able to see it from someone who has, a sort of level of mastery, maybe above where you are. So I can see what they mean. It's very clear what they mean. And then I get the opportunity to, deeply and actively practice it. And I really build that skill in a deep way. And then it's all about like releasing the skill to all the different
Mm.
possible ways that you might innovate on the skill, all the different kinds of hair that might come into your space and the people might come into your space, and really adjusting. But that is really, it's a growth arc, right? You don't like learn something and then you have it. It's like you learn something and then each iteration you do, it changes, it grows.
So
Yeah.
interesting. I mean, to follow up on that, I'm wondering, is there a certain time in that process where you've learned the basic things? And then is there like a time where you're like, oh, I'm ready to try a couple different ways? Or is it just kind of gradual?
Yeah. So I think that learning, and there's good evidence about this, is quite jagged. So oftentimes you have a really steep curve where like you're struggling and you're making mistakes and you're learning very fast, right? And then you sort of plateau off. And when you're in the plateau and everything feels comfortable, that's a sign to like introduce something new so that you can
Mm,
grow again. One of the things I've spent a lot of my career working on is this idea of a productive struggle or desirable difficulty, where your body feels, from an emotional standpoint, a little bit activated, maybe a little bit negative, that like feeling of confusion. I'm not sure. Not too much. You don't want to be too much, but like a little bit. That's an opportunity to say, oh, now I'm learning. Now I'm growing. So you like learn into that space. So you can really use your emotion to help you know when you can push into something new.
that's amazing. Truly,
So
truly.
amazing. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let me ask you this. So before we launched It's the Break Room this year, we went around, did a bunch of research the hairdresser way by just asking all of our friends. We asked stylists about their experiences, like with classes, and over again, we heard, eh, I didn't really retain anything. It's not something that I can use in the class, or it's not something I can use with my clients every day. I felt like I was pretty pumped about it the first couple months, and now I don't, it's whatever. Even like a week later, it could be gone. Why does this actually happen?
I think if that's happening to you, if you're having that experience, it's a sign. And if you look back, you'll probably see that your learning was passive, meaning that you watch, you copy, you leave, maybe you take some notes, maybe you were sitting, but the learning wasn't active. And
Mm,
so when you really want to retain something, it requires that you, especially in this space, that you sort of get your body going and practice the skill in many different ways. And in the context of that, as you're practicing and trying it out, you're getting real-time feedback from people who are maybe, a little bit ahead of you. It's that sort of apprenticeship model, which is a great way to learn active skills, and then reflect on what you did. Like, how did that go for me? How might I do it
mm,
differently? And
mm,
then iterate
mhm.
again. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes
Yeah.
total sense. I need
Let
to
me tell
move
you.
my
Yeah.
body. I need to physically do the thing that's
Yeah.
in front of me. Like, it needs to be very short and sweet, and I think that's what happens in a lot of classroom settings is that it's just like, "This is how I do it. This is how I do it. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm doing it this way."
I am a huge Beatles fan. And
Oh.
Ringo Starr, who's the drummer for the Beatles, famously says to kids who are learning how to play the drums, don't practice too much, don't practice, because what he says is he didn't practice. What he means was he didn't practice alone, right? He liked to play with other people. So he would show up and he would play in the Beatles and the bands before he was in the Beatles and after. And if you look at how they actually worked together when they were recording, like they would work on a song, hundreds of iterations on a song where they were trying different things, giving each other feedback. It was this really intensive experience. Like they were practicing together. So
Love
the
that.
amount of innovation and practice and the number of iterations required actually to learn something and like integrate that skill, it's a lot. And I can't underemphasize to you how much you really need that feedback from someone who has a little more experience than you in the moment. So it's really relevant to what you're working on. So I guess you
Yeah.
guys are like the Paul McCartney and John Lennon of It's the
Well,
Break Room. I don't
I mean,
know.
for sure, definitely.
I'll be John.
It is interesting though about this passive learning. So we have something, especially when it comes to continued education in our industry, where, people will offer these look and learn 3-hour classes. And basically what happens is someone goes in, it's a performance, watch me do this amazing haircut. You can maybe do it on your client, but probably not. And then we're done and done. Good luck practicing on your own if you do it at all. And I see too much of that right now. And I just truly feel like if you're going to learn something, you also have to do it. And what you said, you have to have someone there to help guide you when you get a little stuck. So,
Mhm.
so interesting that that is true, because I just thought I was being grumpy after 30 years of hair. But turns out there's realness there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And everyone's a little different. Like our minds are different, our bodies are different. And so if you come to it, you have certain concepts and ideas, and you're learning something new, like you're integrating this new thing into a brain that you have already built, right? You already have
Mm.
ideas, you already have skills in place as an adult. And that brain is plastic. It can change, it can learn new skills. Your hands have certain ways of moving, and that's all written on your brain, right? And so when you come to it as the educator and as the stylist who's coming to learn the new skill, the things they're going to have trouble with are going to be different than the things you had trouble with, or the way that they're going to conceptualize it. So they literally are reforming their brain when they're learning a new skill, and they have to do it in a way that works and makes sense for them. And the only way to do that is to try it yourself.
Yeah,
Wow.
that leads us into my next question. Hairdressers, a lot of them chose trade school, right? Because they didn't want to go to college. Traditional school wasn't right for them. Like me,
Mhm.
I'm one of those kids. And what makes trade learners exceptional, and how should their education be designed differently?
Yeah, I think every job category draws people, right? Based on the particular your own strengths. Like I feel good in this space because the job, emphasizes those strengths. I can do well there. And in the context of stylists and trade learners, they tend to be practical and problem centered, right? Like
Mm.
learning on the fly, being practical, dealing with problems as they come up. You're really motivated by relevance, and you want to collaborate,
So true.
both with the other folks in your space, with educators, and with your clients. And so, their education should really be applied, right? So, dealing with real world situations, it should be flexible because you're dealing with a lot of different things, right? A lot of
Mm.
different problems that come into your space, and then highly interactive, both in terms of, verbally being able to exchange ideas, and then interactive in terms of the practice that you do. Forget about the theory.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes
Yeah,
so much sense,
makes
right?
so much sense. Yeah.
So good. So, Gabby, let me ask you, you've done a lot of research. You went to college and then you went to grad school and then you got your PhD, and you really, you believe in education at like a higher level. So,
Mhm.
I'm curious, like hair schools and trade programs typically aren't usually part of like academic research from what we've found. How does your work, especially this thing that you've been working on for quite some time called universal design for learning, apply here?
Yeah. Well, That's a big fancy term.
Okay.
So I'll just
Okay.
break it down for you a little bit.
Great.
It's just an idea about how to it's a framework for thinking about how to approach learning. And the big concept within it is that variability is the norm and not the exception. So for a long time in education, we've thought about usually from the educator's point of view, like I'm going to design a thing and I'm going to implement it and then people will learn. But actually, we usually design from either the way that we learn or feel comfortable learning or to the middle 50th percent, right? Like that's sort of what people call like the normal learner, thinking you'll catch everyone. But as it turns out, there is no average learner. It's like the myth
Mm.
of the average. The only thing that is typical about learners is that they are atypical. They vary a huge amount. And so, what universal design allows you to do is to think about that variability, how learners are different from the start when you're designing education. And so, the core idea is to really think about coming from different perspectives. So, different opportunities for visual, for tactile, for verbal. And when you do that, everyone benefits. I want to make sure that we're debunking the learning styles thing, though. That's not a thing, actually. You might have heard that, like,
Oh,
I'm a visual learner, I'm a hands on learner. Debunked by the research
Wow.
really?
literature.
Okay.
I know. But the thing is, I mean, you might feel more comfortable in one avenue or another. Like, I really need hands on, right? So, hands on learners are definitely drawn to the stylist trade for sure. But the idea that I can only learn one way is totally debunked. The key thing to remember is
Love it.
that when we do learning in multiple ways, like I offer a visual representation, I explain it to you verbally, you get to try it in a hands on way, that what I'm doing is I'm taking the same idea and I'm laying it down in the brain in multiple ways. So the
Mm.
more different ways that you lay it down for a person, the more likely it is to stick. And also, next time you try to implement the skill, it'll be more flexible because I can
Huh.
see it, I can hear it, I can talk it, I can do it with my hands.
That is so interesting. I mean,
I love
that's
it.
all anyone talks about. Oh, I'm a
Yeah.
visual learner. Oh, I have to do this. I have to do that. So interesting. See, this was such a good decision.
I like to see it from all angles also.
Yeah. I mean, that is true now that I think about it. When you do learn something, like sometimes, of course, for us, the main focus has been very like tactile and hands on. But
Yep.
sometimes once you get a little bit more comfortable with the skill, looking at an image or something from Fashion Week or someone giving you that, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. And like
Yeah.
looking at that picture and saying, oh, it's a square layer here and the length is like this and the weight removal's here. Like you could start to I don't know, see it a little bit more, and then when people talk about it with the right words,
Yeah.
it kinda does stick, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to ask a person a question and having someone be able to explain clearly why they're doing it a certain way with their hands and like, does that work for you? Let's make an adjustment, right? Like, I'm using words to
Yeah,
talk about the skill. I'm showing an image, maybe, or I'm seeing a different version of it in editorial. I'm practically trying to do it, and the more ways that I try to tackle that problem, the better off I'll be. I mean, I think the skills that you are trying to teach are tactile, right?
yes, yes.
They
Yes.
require that, so that should be the primary mode. And also, I think, as we talked about, people have strengths in different areas, and stylists, I think, naturally are drawn to this profession because they have strengths in hands-on learning. And so, yeah, so absolutely.
I used to work at this one salon that was run by a couple of editorial stylists, and one of them was teaching a class one night to us, and he was doing this, like, a little bit more complicated, like, maybe like a fashion weeky style, and he literally was just like, "Just watch me." And then didn't really say anything or show us a reference picture, and I just remember there, like, standing there with, like, my coworkers, and everyone was super into it, and I was like, what am I supposed to be looking at? Like, I don't know, what are we looking at? Like, is it the head shape? Is it the way he's using his hands? Is it the texture he's creating? And I just was like, yeah,
Yes.
that was so great. I loved your class.
Yeah, so you can exactly. So you can use words to help people understand what to pay attention to. Other
Mm,
people can use words to say, "Wait, this part, can I see that again? I don't understand," or to like
Yeah.
analyze an image.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, you're sometimes going to have people who can't access things like if you have a person who's deaf, for example, they're not going to be able to access that channel. And so you want to have
Uh,
multiple ways. So the key idea under UDL is let's do it in multiple ways and use all the channels so that we
Yeah.
can really lay it down in a way that's flexible.
Yeah. And the
Love it.
information, I feel like for me, with each, the visual part, the verbal part, the tactile part, the information just gets integrated, I think, a little more deeper with
Hmm.
each avenue. I mean, that's my
Absolutely.
experience. So
Yeah.
I like it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give it
Yeah.
all to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
All right. So, a new question for you. What advice would you give stylists when they're choosing classes or like an education program? How can they tell if the class is built on good educational principles?
Yeah, so I think sort of three, I would say three key things. So the first one is in order to feel motivated to do something, you need to understand the why and not just the how. So if you have someone who is teaching you and they're just showing you the how, as opposed to saying, why this way versus that way, like, why is this the approach? It's really important to have that why because it's like the key
Mm.
thing to make it relevant to you and drives motivation. In fact, under universal design, there's three main principles, and one of them is completely devoted to the why. Absolutely,
Oh,
completely devoted to the why. So the why is critically important. So why am I doing this? Why am I here? And why am I doing it this way, like on a micro level? The second one is it a judgment-free environment? So, I mean, I don't know if you guys think of yourselves this way, but I really think about stylists as being artists, right? And sort
yeah,
of one of the key
100%.
things under in art, like one of the key ways that people typically do education is to have critique, right? You create something and you get critiqued. But you want that critique to feel more like relevant real time feedback that is judgment free, right? Because that's that zone where learning in mistakes, that's where learning happens. If
Mm.
you're doing everything perfectly well, you can't struggle toward a new level of mastery, but it has to be comfortable because otherwise your stress level goes up too high and then working memory, flexibility, creative thinking just plummet. It actually is in this inverted U shape. So, like for a while, you may have experienced this where the stress kind of helps you a little bit and you get to a higher level of performance. But at some point, and this point varies differently for everyone, all of your cognitive faculties fall off because you get into that fight or flight zone, right? Or tend or
Mm.
befriend zone. So, you really want to create a judgment, look for a judgment free environment where you're supported through your mistakes to productively struggle. And the third one
Love that.
is does the educator adapt, right? We said
Mm.
earlier that the only truism in learning is that everyone is different. And so to be an excellent educator, you have to be able to like notice when someone is struggling or when the environment isn't aligned to the way that they need. And then they need to be able to adapt on the fly.
Yeah.
So the why,
It's
not just the how, a judgment-free environment, and does the educator adapt?
And do you think, like, I know this is probably a tricky thing to answer, but like, as let's say an independent hairdresser like myself, we're not associated with a salon, but maybe just working for ourselves, and we want to take a class that we feel like is a big investment, right? Like maybe a couple $1,000s or whatever. Is there something in the way that they describe their class or how they give you the information that you could be like, oh, yeah, that's the one? Like, should they say these things in their class descriptions? Like, oh, we're
Mm.
here to be judgment free or whatever it is, so that you know that you're making a good choice rather than, oh, that's a famous hairdresser and I'd love to take a class with them.
Yeah, definitely. I think you wanna be able to see a commitment to learning outcomes for the student. I mean, sometimes I think when we take a class, so I work a lot with college professors, and it can become sort of this performative, like I'm doing a performance, right? I'm
Yeah.
giving a lecture, I'm giving a performance, like as the educator, and everything's on the learner to pick everything up. But really, teaching is an art. And the educator needs to design the learning experience and have a commitment so that every learner who comes to that class will have the outcomes that sort of point of value on the
Oh,
class will
yes.
have the learning outcomes so that they can take it away to learn. So, yeah, I think you're looking for, a space where you are going to get feedback. Like you want to have that desirable difficulty in the class. You want to be at that sort of point of learning that you can grow, right? So, is it the right match for you? And then having an educator who can adapt to make it that way for you. And is the environment joyful? Like,
Yeah.
so there's this thing
And
in the
fun.
yeah, exactly. Is it fun? It
Yeah.
should be fun. We have this idea that in the context of emotion and learning, what you're going for is the zone of joyful learning. And what that means is that your body is like you have a little bit of energy in your body, like it's not too overwhelming, and you're positive. It's not too positive because if you're too activated, you can't integrate something new, but it's this sense of like pleasantness or joy and that you're having fun in the moment, that really is like the perfect space for learning. Even if you're
Mm.
trying something that's a desirable difficulty, that's difficult, right? Are you laughing through that? Like humor can help you
Oh my
in that
Yeah.
God.
moment. And does the educator know how to do that?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. I think sometimes, I wanted to go back to that thing you said about sometimes educators make it's all on the learner and they're
Hmm.
responsible for their learning, right? And I
Yep.
feel like sometimes I hear that. I mean, Sarah Jane and I were talking about this before you came on, is that sometimes stylists think, oh, if I didn't get it, the problem's me. I'm not a good cutter. I'm not good at styling. I'm not a good braider. It's, all that sort of stuff. So it's interesting that you say both sides need to have a responsible role in this.
Yeah, it's a
100%.
collaboration. It's a
Yeah.
Yeah.
collaboration, like, back and forth, and it's not a straight shot either. I did this work early on in my career where I looked at how people who are learning something new, how their concept changes in the
Yeah.
learning moment. So, like, over a
Mm.
short time, like, over a half an hour when they're really delving into learning something new, and it's not like this, it's more like, "Oh, wait, I've got it," and then it falls off, and then I've got it, and then it falls off, so, and then at some point in all those iterations with feedback and support, like, then you have it, right? And that's
Yeah.
that moment of comfort, like, "I can implement this skill, I know I can do this," and that's a time to say, well, I wanna get back in that area of struggle again so I can grow my skill more. So, I think, that's the back and forth, and the
Mm.
educator needs to be able to notice where the person is in that cycle, right? In terms of, like, their "Oh, I've got it, now I don't. Oh, I've got it, now I do not," because 'cause you're, like, building it over time, and be able to offer support at the right time. So, it is like a dance. It's like a
It
beautiful
is.
dance when it goes really well between the learner and the educator.
Perfect. Perfect. I love it. So, Sarah Jane and I were really big believers in lifelong learning, and we feel really lucky to have you here today. So, we're just going to take a free class from you really quickly. What new or breaking research should we know about as we keep developing our curriculum and our classes that are available for people to take?
Definitely. Well, I would say there's sort of two big areas I would emphasize. And one of them we've been talking about this whole time. So that is emotion and learning. So we now know that emotion is key for learning. Like we need it to be in place. And, we often talk about the zone of joyful learning as being like the perfect place to be. And what that means is you have some energy, like you're up for it, you're not low. So you have some energy in your body, but it's not too high. And you are positive, you're to the positive side, right? So even when you're feeling, like I'm having a desirable difficulty, like this is hard, this is a new thing, you're still in that space where you're having joy in your learning. And so,
Mm.
can you, as educators, really groom a path? Groom a path by the way that you're designing your educational experiences to create space for joyful learning and helping everyone get there, right? Because what people need to get to that space of joyful learning is going to be different. Just like on the cognitive side, on the emotion side, we're all a little different. And the second one
Oh, wait,
is really,
before
oh,
we
yeah,
go to the second one, a lot of times I, as a teacher, as an educator, I'll like do an emotional check-in because I can
yeah.
feel somebody in like a hole. It's crazy how you can feel people's energy and their emotion. And I'm like, oh, wait, hold on. Can we back up a minute? Can we just do like, how are you feeling right now? I mean, do you think that that's a good tactic to, it's not really calling people out, but like, hey, let's stop for a second because I can feel something happening here and let's articulate it before we move on. Because I feel like if we don't stop and regroup, this, whatever they're feeling is going to hinder what they're
Definitely.
absorbing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I try to think about it is emotion is information that can help you as an individual figure out what's going on in the environment, or can help an educator to collaborate with you in that moment to make an adjustment so that you're back in that zone of joyful learning. And so learning is not a straight shot. Very it's up and down. We sort of struggle with something, and then, I have it, I don't have it, I have it, I don't have it. And so the emotion goes with that too, right? And so
Yeah. Yeah.
really we want to check in, as educators, absolutely do emotion check-ins so that you can have that information. Maybe you don't see it on the outside, you only see it on the inside. And so the person, by telling you how they feel, gives you a sense of where they are in that arc of like, well, I'm feeling a little bit stressed, but actually I'm kind of in that desirable difficulty zone, and like, let's
Great.
keep going. Or like, this is too much. We need to take a step back. I need a different support here to get me back into that space where I can learn effectively.
Yeah.
Mm.
Communication is key.
Yes,
Love it.
totally. And it might feel weird for people at first to have an educator be like, "Hey, how are you feeling?"
Yeah.
Totally.
So I
Totally.
think being transparent at the beginning and saying, we see emotions as information. And so, like, we want you to be having desirable difficulty so that you are really in the space where you're learning something new and pushing yourself. And that should be joyful and comfortable. And so
Yeah.
when we do emotion check-in, it's to help us know if there's too much confusion or whatever, so we can bring more support to the table to help you get to that next space. So being transparent, having that conversation, help people understand what you're trying to do when you're asking them how they're feeling in the moment.
Great.
I love that.
Great.
I
Yeah.
love that.
So
And
important.
you said you had a second thing too. What was the other thing?
Yes, the second thing is called taking a strengths-based approach. So, I think a lot of times when we design something, we're thinking about all the things that could go wrong
Yeah.
and all the things that are hard, and we try to like
Yeah.
design so that we're hitting those points instead of also thinking about, well, how can I speak to the strengths of the learners who are coming to the table, right? So when we think about trade learners, it really attracts people who tend to excel in things like applied problem solving, collaboration, adaptability. And so creating an educational experience that leans in to that space, you really are speaking to the person's strengths when they come into the
Oh,
room. And it makes it, hands-on, relevant, and interactive for them so that they can really achieve mastery faster and have more confidence, in that space. So taking a strengths-based approach really supports belonging in a way that allows you to move toward mastery in a way that, feels good for everyone.
Mm,
yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. So smart.
So great.
Oh my gosh. This conversation has been great. Like, we've learned so much. And then it's also kind of, I think it's actually what we believe, but like we didn't have maybe the right words for it or knew how
Exactly.
to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think that hair education needs to feel rigid, overwhelming, and especially like judgy. It
Yeah.
just doesn't. And it really can be joyful, inclusive, and grounded in real science, as we've learned.
Yeah. And it gives stylists a checklist. Choose classes that explain why, lets you ask questions and make you feel safe to experiment. And that's how you know you're getting real education and not just a show.
Mm, mm, love it. So, Gabby, before we let you go, we've started a new tradition here at Hair Smarter.
Yeah. And each guest leaves a question for the next guest. And without knowing who they are, it could be about hair, it could be about life, it could be about learning. So, whatever you think everyone in our audience would want to hear, what they want to hear answered would be a great question to ask.
So think about that for a second. But as you know, you are our first guest. This is episode 00001. So we actually asked our audience and people who follow us for a question that they would like answered, though we didn't tell them who the guest was. So here's the big one. What advice would you give your younger self about handling failure?
Ooh,
Yeah, just a light question to end the day.
yeah.
That's pretty
It's such a good question. That's the key. That is the key to all things in learning, I think. I guess what I would say is to my younger self, feeling stressed and upset in that moment, right? And activated is totally normal way to feel. And it's not going to ultimately be helpful for you, younger self, to grow from this experience, you know? So, like, have the feelings, punch a pillow, go for a run. Actually, like, using your body to work out those feelings is huge because your body is like totally connected to your emotions. So, get out all the feelings by moving your body, doing something with your body, and then recenter and be like, okay, if I give grace to this myself in this situation and say, what can I learn from this? And what am I going to ignore? Because sometimes it's okay to ignore some of it, but like, what can I learn from this? Then you can grow. That's what I would say. And it's tough. But I think sometimes on the growth mindset stuff, when I talk to teachers and learners, it's like, it's just so hard. It's so hard. And we try to teach it as if I'm going to like talk to you about this and then you're going to be able to do it and you're never going to have bad feelings about making a mistake or failing again. But actually like having the uncomfortable feelings is a part of it. And you should just feel the feelings, work through the feelings, and then come back to it.
I like how you use the word activated also, like feeling activated. That's a very non-judgmental word to use when we're talking about feelings. So that in itself, I feel like is super healthy.
Yeah, there's no feelings aren't good or bad. They're just information. And you can work them out. Like you can manage your feelings, you can control your emotions, and you can do it using your body and your mind.
Yeah.
So
amazing.
Love it.
Amazing.
I love it.
Do you have a question you'd like to leave for the following guest?
I think let's stay on that same theme.
Okay.
So asking them, what's one mistake you made early in your career that you feel really grateful for now?
I love
You
it.
know?
Love it.
I think that would be a really
Love.
good one. And how did you work through it? Like, because
Mhm.
it's always going to be a working through, even when you're an expert at moving through mistakes and failure. It's going to be having to work through those feelings to learn.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
So we'll save that, and whoever sits in the chair next, they'll have to answer it.
And they'll
Woohoo!
leave one for the next guest after them, and it keeps the break room conversation flowing, and you get the honor of kicking it off.
Whoop, whoop.
Amazing. Well, I love you guys. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
Really a lot of fun.
Gabrielle Rappolt-Schlichtmann, for joining us on Hair Smarter today. I had to say it all together.
Totally. And listen, stylist listeners, if this resonated, you know what to do. Subscribe, like, share this episode, and most importantly, talk about it with your team. As always, cut the noise, own the craft, and stay hair smarter.